So last week, normally I don't do super well week one because I'm still getting a feel for the NFL teams. But I did pretty well last week. I picked the Steelers plus 6.5 because I just really believe in Mike Tomlin, particularly in the early parts of the year. His teams are just always practicing hard and so well coached that they keep things close. The Chiefs, I think they're going to win the Super Bowl, and I think the Cardinals are bad, so that was an easy line for me. And the Bucks, I predicted that the Cowboys would be a bad team this year, and boy was I right. Boy did they look terrible, and they looked terrible even before Dak Prescott's injury. And poor Bradley, Pats got shellacked in Miami. Cowboys, as I mentioned, look like crap. And the Ravens won, and that was the pick that you were successful at. But you were at that game, and you were a Jets
It's an
fan.
absolute guarantee. It's a guarantee going into it.
Total lock. So like but for me, I'm not as confident this week at all. I was pretty confident about those three. These are the picks that we're gonna go with this week. So we're gonna be doing this as a season long competition between the two of us. So Bradley, you can 100% make this gain some ground back, and you probably will because I'm definitely feeling a little less confident this week. So these are the picks that I have lined up. I'm going out on a limb with Jacksonville. So I just don't like the way the Colts look. Maybe that is a stupid choice because I know that a lot of Colts players are going to be upset with the way that the season ended in week 17, which was Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence coming and into town. And maybe actually it wasn't Jacksonville, I'm forgetting, but they knocked Indianapolis out of the playoffs and they were supposed to be in the wild card round. But unfortunately for them, Carson Wentz just like played like total crap, and they did enough to get it done. And so the Colts are going to be mad, I think. But for me, I liked how Jacksonville looked in when they were playing Washington last week. And I also, this is the real reason I picked Jacksonville as underdogs. And I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but I think that they'll at least keep it really close. So potentially they could lose by a field goal. Doug Peterson is their head coach, facing off against Frank Reich, who was his offensive coordinator. Frank Reich, his tendencies, Peterson's going to know. Peterson's going to know them. And so that's why I went with Jacksonville, and it's at home. They want to get this new era off to a good start. And I've been low on Indianapolis for the whole year. So I'm going with Jacksonville plus 3.5 for this week. Now, we're using, by the way, DraftKings Sportsbook for these lines, and they may vary when you look other places, but this is what we're going with throughout the year. Now, I have Cincinnati walloping the Dallas Cowboys this week. I'm fading Dallas all year. I think the Bengals are going to come in pissed at the way that sloppy game went with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they should have won that game. They would have won that game if their long snapper didn't get injured and tore both his biceps. I don't even know how the hell that happens. Hope he's okay. But I believe in Joe Burrow. I think he had a crappy game, and the Steelers were prepared to mess with him. And the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. They were coming into town, division rivals, and Tomlin had something cooked up for him. And Tomlin is vastly superior to Zach Taylor. So, as we saw with the way that Zach Taylor managed the clock in that game. So I
was thinking the Super Bowl also that he
yeah, that too.
He was terrible with in-game management as well.
So yeah, I just like I think Cincinnati is going to win by at least a touchdown, and Cooper Rush is going to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, who are coached by Mike McCarthy, who is arguably the biggest thief in the entire NFL for the fact that he still gets head coaching opportunities. His teams are arrogant. They don't have accountability, particularly when you're in Dallas. It's easy to fall into that trap. They are undisciplined. They look lifeless. They look like they want to play the blame game constantly. You hear that in press conferences. Like, I'll never forget how they acted after that terrible run down the middle when they were playing the Niners in the playoffs. And they acted like it was the ref's fault that they were unable to get the snap off. No, it was your guys' fault
Yeah, that's
because
just
you're terribly coached.
That's a rule. That's just a rule.
It's
The
just
ref
a
has to
rule.
get the ball. Like when people are doing when quarterbacks are doing 2-minute drills, they are intentionally doing that.
I just yeah, and Mike, they're always like blaming everybody else, and it's just I hate the culture down there. And I liked Dak Prescott for a long period. I've liked less of what he's had to say since he's had the leader in Mike McCarthy. I think McCarthy is not just a terrible coach, but he does not foster an environment of accountability and of structure and discipline in the teams that he coaches. So I think Cincinnati's going to win by like 2 touchdowns. So I'm pretty confident about that.
I think there's 2 things going for you there in the sense that I just do not think. I think I could be wrong, but I think Burrow having 5 turnovers, a line that he's simply I don't think he's had since at least like his early college days or even in high school.
Yeah.
So I think that will regress to the mean, and also the Cowboys are going in with so many disadvantages. They have Mike McCarthy coaching a backup quarterback with 2 of their starting offensive linemen out and their number 2 receiver out. Like if they could pull something off, it could be miraculous, but I think they're going to get their asses kicked.
Yeah, I mean, clearly I do too. And I think Cincinnati is a well-rounded team in that the offensive line will begin to gel a bit more. They were able to run the ball and get some chunks off with Joe Mixon. Burrow will apparently he was incredibly hard on himself after last game. He'll try to find a way to course correct. And then you have the best receiver in football in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who's also like a top 20 receiver. And the offensive line's improved. The secondary is solid. They've got some decent pass rushers. They've got it. And Dallas does not have impact players, or they have a few impact players, I should say. But the rest of the team outside of CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and Diggs, what have you got? What have you got? And
Yeah,
nothing.
And also to put the Steelers game in perspective, of course, we're saying so much on Tuesday that week 1 is so wonky, but like the Bengals were tied at the end of regulation with the Steelers, playing like probably some of their worst football.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't as if they were down 2 scores to Pittsburgh and like trying to come back from that. They were literally still in the game with Burrow turning the ball over 5 times.
Exactly. They would have won the game if as I mentioned,
right.
By 1 point if they were able to kick the extra point, which they couldn't because of the long snapper injury.
Like NFL teams don't staff a backup long snapper because it's just so rare for them to sustain significant injury. Like that was a backup tight end who had to come in and like hold the snap on the most momentous play of the game.
Right.
Like it's a tall order. So like I just think they have. I don't.
They were the better team versus the Steelers.
Yeah, and like comparing their offenses, even with the turnovers, comparing the defense, I just don't buy that they're not going to be good. Like I don't buy that this is what we're going to see from them going forward.
And then lastly, I have the Rams winning by double digits. So,
big line.
There are 2 double-digit lines that I considered going with here, and the other one is the Broncos against the Houston Texans, which was also, I believe, 10 or 10.5. So, I just like, I think the Rams are going to be pissed for the way that they looked against the Bills. Their offensive line is immensely concerning. Whitworth's loss, woo! Boy, did it look bad. And Matthew Stafford's still not right. So those two compounding factors made the pass game just fall apart last week. But they're coming off a long week. And I think the Falcons are one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL. Their offensive line, I probably underestimated in the way that I spoke about them in before the season started. Like they're decent, so maybe they'll be able to stop the pass rush of the Rams for a bit. But they got Aaron Donald, and they're at home, And so I think that the Rams are going to win by a touchdown and a field goal at least.
You have two revenge games on here for bad performances. So we'll see if both the Bengals and we'll see if the two Super Bowl teams from last year are righteously furious at looking like absolute garbage coming out of the gate
Right.
in week one.
Exactly. So those are my picks, and we shall see. Go on, Bradley. You're up.
All right, yeah. So for me, I had I'm still betting against the Bucks, which was not.
No, this is my. I almost went with this, too.
Yeah, I just think looking from last week, not even thinking that the Bucks looked bad, more than I'm surprised at how good the Saints looked. In the sense that if they could potentially continue to repeat how they're looking on offense with Jameis connecting with a bunch of his receivers in terms of, Chris Olave having a decent game for his first game as a rookie, connecting with Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas going for 2 touchdowns. Like, this offense is just looking a little bit more frisky than I anticipated coming out, especially with Dennis Allen taking over for Sean Payton, because he's more of a defensive-minded head coach. But they already have a pretty great defense to begin with. So I just think they're going to be. Their competitiveness surprised me, and I think I might be wrong, but I think it's sustainable. So I do think they'll keep it close with Tampa.
And also, the Tampa and under Brady has a really bad record in New Orleans.
Oh, and that's
and
the other.
against New Orleans.
I was just thinking that I forgot that they actually have always kind of had like a Saints problem with Brady. So
if they can get pressure up the middle with some of those pass rushers who can't have at points, been really solid. I would say like Davenport's really inconsistent and stuff.
And when he is good, he's really good. And
Right.
like Cam Jordan, it's.
I mean, and Brady, the Bucks did look really good, I think, defensively. I thought the offense looked like
They needed to feel like, I mean, that catch by Evans was like a hero catch.
but they were the field goal guys,
Yeah.
and so you worry just if Brady can stand in the pocket right now within the red zone and actually hit guys while facing pressure in his face. You don't know, right? And
Right.
my guess is he'll hit his stride later in the year, but he's been trying to make his marriage work with Giselle, not at camp, not at practice. I mean, there's some rust there for anybody.
And he's of
He's
course,
45.
and he is superhuman in his longevity, especially at quarterback. But he still is 45 years old. Like, he certainly has there's just there's more tread on his tracks. Like, there's always a chance that he could have I guess what I'm saying is not I'm not even predicting him falling off in week 2 of this season, like, not at all. I'm just saying there might be performances where you're like, oh yeah, he is a 45-year-old man who's played 20 seasons of football. Like, he sometimes just might not have it, and with a defense that actually might be able to kind of screw him up, which I think potentially, because the Saints have all, like you said, with him in Tampa, they've always had some sort of game plan for him that's been kind of stifling or frustrating for him. So I could see the trend continuing.
And Allen's been there for those defensive
Right. Oh
game
yeah.
plans.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And then for my second one, not even because I really believe in the Steelers, I'm just like really not believing in the Patriots, both from what I saw from them against the Dolphins, but also just because I'm still, even though obviously like some of these things, when you think about the coaching dynamics, they're not provable in the sense, like, you can only really know if there's certain levels of discord or levels of confusion, like if you're in the room. But of course, I think you have to like take reports out of these things for what they're worth. Like, I trust the reports out of New England that it's like it does genuinely seem like actually befuddling, like what is happening for the offense, and like who is calling the shots, who is the actual offensive coordinator between Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, who, we can't stress this enough, have never been offensive coordinators in their careers. Is Belichick calling the plays? Like, it just seems like there's some sort of strange power vacuum or hierarchical void that does not, for me, ever portend well for a team succeeding. And they looked so lifeless and just not cohesive last week. So, like, this pick is way more for me not believing in the Patriots having a lot of juice this season than it is me thinking the Steelers are going to be super competitive. I just think they'll keep this close because I don't trust the Patriots right now.
And I'll back up what you have to say about like some sort of coaching dynamic. Look who is on the Steelers staff right now, former Patriots defensive coordinator Brian Flores.
That's right.
Now, he might know some tricks of the trade that
sure.
can trip those guys up. And Yeah, hopefully Tomlin taps into Brian's knowledge for this one because I, I I I wanted Belichick to win one without Brady, but now that like it's so clear that's not going to happen, I'm rooting for their downfall.
Because and I like you were saying on Tuesday, like it really this it's of course it's one of it's a similar thing where it is so hard to like actually prove a negative space argument, being like, oh, who needed who more, but like. Brady went to Tampa Bay and won a Super Bowl immediately, and Belichick has kind of presided over some like pretty middling to bad teams since Brady left.
The talent looks bad, and it used to be like, well, they'll overcome it with execution, and I just don't see that happening anymore.
And like it and like seemingly when Brady was there, that's what was happening, and it's just not happening anymore.
Hmm.
Like I'm not seeing that many players since Brady left who I'm like, oh, like they've actually their talent and their execution has increased significantly, where I kind of thought they were more of a middling player, and I thought that was so many people on the Pats with Brady there, and that's just not happening anymore.
Right.
And my final one, yeah, this one I think is tough for me because I don't love betting against the Lions, but and I'm not even and this isn't for me also thinking the Lions even looked bad. I actually thought the Lions looked pretty competitive in their game against the Eagles last week. They just ran up against AJ Brown having a phenomenal game.
Hmm.
But this is more because I'm surprised at how good Washington looked.
Hmm.
And I could be totally wrong in the sense like that could have been a week one fluke and they could just be absolutely terrible the rest of the season. I was just very surprised at how that offense looked. Like Wentz was throwing deep balls that I just like didn't think he could still throw. Jahan Dotson looked pretty feisty out there and kind of proving to people even just from week one that he can run routes. He's not in the sense that he's not just a slot receiver
Right.
because of his size. Terry McLaurin looked ready. Like I just think there'll be more. They looked much more competitive for me and much more. They look like they have the capacity to keep a game close, and I don't think the Lions are so formidable of an opponent that like it would be a washout or a blowout from the outset looking at this line.
And fun little wrinkle to it, the first overall pick and the second overall pick of whatever draft that was, one who went to the Rams and the other who went to the Eagles, facing off against each other, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. So
Oh yeah, that's wild actually.
really, right? I mean,
both on not the teams that they were drafted by.
yeah.
And with some stop. Well, actually, I guess Goff this is his second stop, but Wentz this is his third.
So this is why I probably would pick Washington if I were to pick, even though I don't know if I would bet on this game. Because I think you're right. They look better, and that trio of receivers that you mentioned, Dotson, Curtis Samuel, and Terry McLaurin, they're fast. But all three of those guys are fast. And Wentz is mercurial and can turn it over, but he can sling it, and he's got a strong arm. And as long as they can make explosive plays, I think that they're gonna probably win that game. So, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't feel these. I kind of felt like lock of the week was easier for me to pick last week of my three for Jets Ravens. I don't feel like an overwhelming amount of confidence on any of these three.
Yeah.
But I think they're possible.
Right.
Like I also took all dogs too, which I like.
Yeah. I mean,
I didn't take any favorites.
and I took overwhelming favorites, right? And that's something I'm kind of going more into the season with is like just being okay with taking big lines and taking the points because the odds makers know what they're doing on that front. And if someone's a 10-point favorite, they're probably gonna blow them out.
And the Falcons and the Cowboys did not do anything last week for me to think like, oh, that's kind of like a crazy line, you know?
Right.
Like I don't the Cowboys, like we were saying, I can't express it enough. Like the Cowboys looked bad with Dak.
Right.
It's not as if the product
The Falcons looked better with Mariota
right,
than the Cowboys
looked
looked.
with Dak. Like
Yeah.
who would have thought, you know? So I think I understand the kind of the size of both of those lines, even though sometimes you can kind of gawk because it's like, oh, that's a heavy one. That's
Right.
something over 3. I'm always kind of like, whoa.